Hello everyone, welcome to the SI UK Study Abroad webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. We are pleased to host this session in collaboration with Lancaster University, a highly ranked UK university with a global reputation for research and teaching. Ranked in the UK top 15 on all three major UK university league tables and ranked in the world top 150 according to the QS World University Ranking 2024. We are honored to have with us Johnny, a recruitment and conversion officer international at Lancaster University. With his vast experience and deep insight, he will guide us through an engaging presentation that highlights the university's unique strength and opportunities for international students like you. After the presentation, there will be a dedicated Q&A session where the professors will address your questions of studying at Lancaster. So please get ready to be inspired and let's dive into what makes Lancaster an excellent choice for your academic journey. Without further delay, I'll now hand it over to Johnny. Over to you, Johnny.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for that excellent introduction and for that warm welcome. Hi, everyone. It's great to speak to you all today from Lancaster University. Rahul said that I will be the expert guiding you through today's presentation. I will do my best, but actually I am joined by my colleagues in our School of Computing and Communications, and I'll hand over to Brian shortly to take you through our taster session for today. We're also joined by Dr. Simon Tomlinson. Simon, give us a wave. From our School of Computing and Communications. Simon is our engagement manager and works very closely with external businesses as our program co-director for artificial intelligence, or MSc. And we also have two student ambassadors here with us today who study MSc data science at Lancaster. We have Achintia and we have Joe, and they'll be there throughout the session today, and we'll be answering questions during the Q&A session. My name's Johnny. As Rahul introduced me, I work within the recruitment team at Lancaster, and I'm also a former student of Lancaster University as well, and I've been at the university for quite some time, about 10 years. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Dr. Brian Williams. But actually, a quick introduction to the session today. So I've said we'll have the taster session. There'll be time to hear more about our courses in MSc Artificial Intelligence, in MSc Data Science, and that's where Simon will give you some more insights into those exciting courses that we offer. We'll share more information with you about our scholarships that we have available for international students looking at science and technology courses at Lancaster. So very, very briefly, I can say that we are offering scholarships of up to £10,000 in tuition fee waivers for students who achieve a first-class honours equivalent, but more about that later. And then finally, we will have time for a Q&A with our current students, Achintia and Joe, as well as with Brian and Simon. So please ask us your questions then. Before we do move on to the taster session, which everyone is here for today, I think it's really important to start with a little bit of context for you all. So where are we calling you from today? So we're joining you from Lancaster in the northwest of the United Kingdom. Lancaster University, as Rahul has said, is a highly ranked UK university, highly ranked in the UK, but also overseas. And we are found in the northwest of England, amongst beautiful surrounding countryside, but also not far from the picturesque historic city of Lancaster, which is somewhere that I've been very, very pleased to call home for a number of years now. We're not far away from cities like London, 2.5 hours on the train, Manchester, and it doesn't take long at all to get further afield and do some travelling whilst you're a student here at Lancaster University. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to hand you over to Dr. Brian Williams to tell you more about artificial intelligence at Lancaster, give you a flavour for what the student experience is like here studying with us. And without further ado, Brian, over to you.
Thank you, Johnny. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for attending. So I like to start with just a bit of an introduction. So I think it's always important to know who it is you're talking to or who's talking to you. So I'm Brian Williams. I'm a senior lecturer in computer vision here at Lancaster University. I'm also director of equality, diversity, and inclusion at the university and the director of two research groups at the uni. So my role within the university really involves two key things. One is teaching, where I lead all of the artificial intelligence education at undergraduate level, and I supervise many of the postgraduate projects. And on the other side, I do research as well. So my research areas are computer vision, medical imaging, forensic identification, core machine learning methodology, and they kind of are all what we consider these days to be artificial intelligence. Okay. So on the teaching side, so I focus on teaching primarily undergraduate, but also postgraduate machine learning. And my teaching focuses on really the kind of core methodology. So in my background, I'm not actually a computer scientist, even though I'm calling from a computer science department. I'm actually a mathematician. So my background is in algebraic geometry and optimizations of nonlinear systems, which these days, fortunately, lends itself very well to studying artificial intelligence. So I teach the kind of core methodology that you will be able to learn when you join Lancaster. So that includes things like neural network. It includes the really cool things that we all want to learn these days, like neural networks. But also going back to the really core, what we'd consider now to be almost classical approaches, like KNN, naive Bayes, decision trees, that are all still so important to learn because they really form a fundamental basis of the kind of methodology that that you'll need to learn and understand. So from a research point of view, so we're what's called a research-led university. And the really useful thing about that, I think, is that a lot of our teaching is also research-led, which means that you're learning from people who are current expert researchers and currently doing world-leading research in these areas, which means we know what we're talking about, but we're also teaching you up-to-date things, and we're telling you about the relevance of what you're learning to current research. So my research area is a field called computer vision. So computer vision is a branch of artificial intelligence that is involved in the development of methodology and algorithms to build machine learning effectively that works with imaging technology and imaging data. And that can be 2D imaging, 3D. It can be, if we're using satellite images, that can go all the way up to 12 dimensions. And this covers a huge range of topics, including convolutional neural networks, deep learning, machine learning, and of course, artificial intelligence. So one of the things that I really love about artificial intelligence is, especially these days, it's a real multidisciplinary subject. And any kind of research area, or even any kind of job that you might find yourself in these days, involves many, many different disciplines. So what I'm showing here is just a snapshot of the few core disciplines. So in computer vision, we're spread across physics, mathematics, artificial intelligence. We have pattern recognition. But we also have some wider areas that are also very important. So for me, for example, psychology is very important. Forensic investigation is very important. Working with clinical colleagues is also very important. And linguistics is increasingly important these days as well. And that's one thing I think that's really important to remember, and that you will see when you come here and you see the optional modules that we have available, is the kind of breadth of material that you can cover in artificial intelligence. So it's not just a one kind of slimline subject. So my research, which feeds into the teaching, covers really four different kind of areas. You've got forensic identification, which is about the identification of individuals for the purposes of taking the evidence into the courtroom. We've got medical imaging, we've got industry development and industry work. And then what really ties everything together is the kind of core theoretical. So the point of this slide really is there's two sides to artificial intelligence that is very important to be aware of. You've got what most people consider to be your application side, which in this case would be things like forensic identification, medical imaging. These are target domains that we're developing something the domains that we're developing a solution for. And then we've got our core theoretical. And I always think it doesn't make sense to be involved in only one of those. It doesn't make sense to only be involved in the application side, to just use something that exists already and see how that works. But at the same time, it doesn't make sense to only be involved in the core theoretical side, where you're developing something, but you don't necessarily know where it's going to be used or where it can be used. You want to be working across all of these areas. So the way that we've designed the MSc in artificial intelligence is so that you can cover these broad areas and you can cover both of these aspects, which personally I think is vital. And another thing I said earlier that is really important to know who you're talking to and who's talking to you. One of the advantages of coming to place somewhere like Lancaster, which is a top 10 university in the UK, is that many of us, we're not just doing research, we're doing what would be considered to be world-leading research. So here's a snapshot of so this is some of my research that comes out of my research group that is published in the leading journal. So some of those, anybody who does research can see that actually some of those have archive watermarks, but that's just the archive version. They've been published in good places, I promise you. So we've got publications there at places like CDPR, ECCD, which are really the world-leading publications in these areas. So you're being taught by research leaders doing current state-of-the-art research. So why AI? Why is it interesting to do at all? I mean, for me, AI is something that I've been working in for the past 20 years now. And it's something that's existed for a very, very, very long time. It's very recently that everybody is talking about AI, of course, but it's existed for a long time. And it's taken a colossal amount of work and a colossal amount of developments to get us to the place where we are now. And the reason that everyone's talking about it now is that it's reached a point where AI can start to infiltrate our daily lives. It's not just that we're building it for the lab anymore. And that's not going to slow down. So a lot of people are talking at the moment about, the kind of AI industrial revolution. So this is something that is not going to go away. And in fact, the current estimate is that AI is going to contribute approximately $15.7 trillion to the global economy by 2030. So that means it's not going away, it's actually going to accelerate. Okay, so it's a very, very good area to be in at the moment. So what are we doing with AI at the moment? So right now, how is it actually transforming research and industry? So I said this is why it's really important, a good time to start getting involved in AI. But where actually is it? So it's in the places that we all know. So one of the earlier examples where we really saw what we've now come to think of as AI infiltrating our daily lives was the things like virtual assistants. So the earlier days, we had Google Assistant, we've had Alexa, and Cortana, and Siri. So all of these are powered by some variation of artificial intelligence, and in particular, what the kind of modern incarnation of what we consider to be artificial intelligence. Self-driving cars, so a really interesting advancement from my point of view of self-driving cars wasn't necessarily so much that we had cars that could drive themselves. That wasn't even all that surprising to me. For example, I had a Ford C-Max, which is not a fancy car, that even 13 years ago was able to park by itself using sensors. The real advancement from my point of view in terms of self-driving cars that occurred fairly recently was this idea to relax the reliance on sensors like radar and rely more on vision. So using cameras, which is in a sense is a lot better because it's a lot cheaper, and you can use them for many things. But to me, that was a real sign that computer vision had achieved a massive advancement, that we could actually rely on computer vision techniques, rely on cameras to drive a car. And of course, the ones that make the headlines tend to be the fun ones. So there's a couple of key milestones that occurred. One in the 90s, when a AI-based system first beat a chess world champion. And then very surprisingly, I think this was back in 2016, We had Google DeepMind achieved a huge milestone in modern machine learning when its AlphaGo system beat the world champion at Go. So Go, if you're not familiar, is a game which is far more complicated than chess. And it's exceptionally difficult to develop a machine learning model that could actually perform well, that could actually challenge a grandmaster. And that was achieved in 2016. So that's 9 years ago now. These days, especially very recently, with the advent of ChatGPT, which probably needs no introduction to anybody, one of the interesting developments that's come out in the past couple of years is natural language processing. So one of the core tasks for that are things like machine translation. And if anyone's tried to use a machine translator before, you'll probably understand that actually just how useful this can be, but also, especially with certain languages, just how much left there is to do. So very often when it comes to these kind of problems, these kind of AI problems, I think we look at them sometimes and we think, okay, machine translation, we've had this for quite some time. Really, could there be anything else to do? Someone said to me recently when we were talking about human anatomy tracking, in particular hand tracking, and they said to me, oh, come on, surely a hand being tracked, that's been done. We don't need to do it anymore. And then you take a look at the accuracy values and realize, there's still work. And that's what I think makes this a great time to be in artificial intelligence. It's not just how far it's going, which is of course great. It's not how far it's come and the position it's in at the moment, but really is how much there is left to do. And there is so much left for us still to achieve. So one of my core areas in terms of artificial intelligence research is in relation to medicine. So when we think about how artificial intelligence these days interacts with healthcare, interacts with medicine, I personally tend to think that it falls under 3 different categories. You've got image processing and analysis, you've got diagnostics, and you've got device development. So that's how I categorize it. So when we think about image processing and analysis, this is covering things, areas where we're trying to extract some kind of meaningful information from imaging data. So these might be pathologies. So we might want to investigate a particular pathology, or these days a collection of pathologies. We might want to enhance a noisy image and make it fit for a clinician to read. We might want to perform some sort of additional helping task like localization or extraction. Diagnostics, we typically think of as a classification task. So this means that we've got some data and we want to decide what it contains. So your classical example is images of cats and dogs, and you're trying to decide, is this a cat, is this a dog? In the point of view of diagnosis, you're trying to decide, is this representative of a particular disease or not? And if it is, what is the severity? So very often in diagnostics, we're not limited to necessarily to classification, but we extend it very much to a regression task as well. And then finally, once we have developed all of our techniques, the big question often is actually, is the existing devices that we've got sufficient, or are the existing devices sufficient, or can we push the boundaries there as well? And 2 of the ways that we're doing that is in developing higher resolution devices and the cameras and the techniques, the artificial intelligence techniques, to be able to produce that data and to utilize it intelligently. And can we build non-contact devices as well, and non-invasive devices? So to just show very briefly an example problem that I work in is related to glaucoma diagnosis. And part of the reason I think this is quite interesting for this session is this is a project that we're doing partly in the UK. So this is a collaboration between Lancaster, Liverpool John Moores, Southampton, which isn't on there, UCL, Belfast, but also several hospitals in the UK, and our collaborators in Pondicherry. If anybody knows, that's a very nice seaside town next to Chennai, in the southeast of India. Okay, so our principle when it comes to glaucoma diagnosis, so this is another one of those things you'd think, okay, come on, glaucoma is a disease, everyone knows about it. How difficult could it possibly be to diagnose? What could the problem possibly be here? Well, the problem is that, number 1, many places don't have the sufficient technology to be able to diagnose glaucoma. Number 2, Even if you've got some of that technology, you don't necessarily have the expertise. And actually, there's quite a low precision that's typically attached to the diagnosis of glaucoma, which wastes a huge amount of money and means that the diagnostic service isn't necessarily available. So our approach is to say, okay, number one, can we just use this fundus images, these kind of orange images that you can see on the slide, and can we use these in an intelligent way that can get us a high accuracy? And our answer is yes. So by developing artificial intelligence techniques that can interrogate these kind of images, that can interrogate the measurements in a useful way, means that based on just these kind of cheap images that we can get in these days, one thing we're trialing in Pondicherry is cameras that cost no more than £500 to produce these kind of images. And we're showing that with artificial intelligence, we can increase accuracy from 70%, well, between 70 and 85%, depending on which population you're looking at, up to 92.9%. And we've since increased that further to 96%. Okay, so the kind of techniques that we're developing here are related to statistical methods, core machine learning methods, and computer vision-based approaches as well. So another project that's very important to me is in forensic identification. So this is a particular project that we've been working on for quite some time, where we're aiming to be able to identify people by the anatomical features found on the body, in particular on the hands. And similarly, this is another project actually, where we're working on between the UK, the US, and India. So we have several universities in the UK. So we're working with Lancaster, Dundee, and Oxford. And we have, so one of my postdocs is still working on this project. He's working at PDEU at the moment in Ahmedabad. And I have another, one of my research associates is currently working in New Delhi. Okay. So the idea of this project is that we're trying to extract detailed anatomical features and structures, and we're trying to measure them in an intelligent way. So this is another way that we can try to advance AI, is by saying, okay, if we had a human doing this, could they possibly draw this graph of every single image? Bearing in mind that Interpol alone has hundreds of millions of these kinds of images. Could we ask a human to do that? No. Can we build an artificial intelligence technique to do that? Potentially, but it's never been done before. So this is one of the other ways that we're pushing the boundaries. So this involves techniques like graph-based techniques for graph search, it's image segmentation. So this is a lot of things that are going to be covered in advanced artificial intelligence and again in computer vision. So once we've got these kind of extractions of detail, the question is, how do we actually extract them in an intelligent way? So these kind of graphs, this is the formula. This is a part of what we'd consider to be certainly advanced artificial intelligence. To a degree, we're also using, not quite for this problem, but for a closely related problem, we're using generative AI, where people are trying to generate artificial images that we can actually learn from. And in terms of the comparisons as well, we're using a combination here of these kind of core machine learning techniques that I told you about earlier, and modern up-to-date artificial intelligence to build techniques that can very intelligently make comparisons of the individuals and of their hand structures. And if we take all of these different things and combine them, this is when we start to do some really cool stuff. So this is an example of our 3D reconstruction. So this is a combination of pose estimation, of cross attention, of self attention, of reconstructing texture, reconstructing light, estimating camera parameters in order to estimate hand depth. So there's so many different techniques involved in just one simple 30-second video like this. Okay. So there's lots of challenges on the way. So challenges to do with security, to do with annotation, to do with working with real world data. And we're going to look at what those challenges are. Because if we can achieve them, if we can tackle these challenges, there's so many possibilities for the future of what we can try to achieve. Okay, so what is the future? What are we actually looking to prepare for with this master's degree? Well, one core aspect, if we're working with anything to do with security, anything to do with medical imaging, a really important concept is that the individual that this is being applied to has the right to have that decision explained to them. So you may have heard of explainable AI, which is a really, really important topic to focus on these days. Interaction with humans, so as AI becomes more and more a part of our daily lives, the question of how that can interact intelligently with humans becomes very important. In terms of our actual developments in artificial intelligence, we're developing these very often to achieve our own scientific discoveries. So in this module, we're covering things like generative AI, we're covering natural language processing, computer vision, and you'll see examples of how we're actually developing AI in order to achieve these tasks. And a very important thing for Lancaster is environmental studies. So we're developing AI to tackle global issues like predicting the weather intelligently, monitoring migratory patterns of endangered species, and looking at things like the energy consumption. Modern problems like privacy. So very often these days, you see the question of AI cropping up controversially in courtrooms and on your TV. And very often, the question of the controversy surrounding AI is actually not so much about the AI itself. There is an issue of AI, of bias in AI, which is also something that we'll study. But very often, the problem is actually the way in which the AI has been used. So it's very often the person who's using it that's causing the issue. So there's a so the AI itself, it's not just a kind of computer thing that we just set running. There's a hugely important aspect of the interaction with the human and the ethical interaction with the human. And of course, these days, deepfakes are so important to study. So we'll be covering this in the advanced AI module, along with bias. So if we take, and this is another thing where we think these days, okay, surely there's no bias in AI these days, we can engineer that out. Well, apparently not. So if we take this example, so this is an example of automatically translating between Hungarian and English. So Hungarian is a genderless language. So there's no notion of masculine and feminine pronouns. So if we take an example, I cannot speak Hungarian, I'm sorry. So if we take the first example, however that's pronounced, the translation into English is she is a nurse. But the next one is he is a scientist. And we can see on the left-hand side, there is no inclination whether or not that should be he or she. Okay. So one thing we'll study during this degree is we're going to study bias. We're going to study how that actually impacts us as humans, how that impacts AI, but also what can we do about bias? How can we start to mitigate bias and build it out of the models that we're building? Okay. So in terms of AI at Lancaster, so who are we at Lancaster? So we are in the UK, we're a top 10 university. We're ranked 141st in the QS World Rankings. And we're very highly ranked for artificial intelligence and data science itself. So teaching and research, as I said earlier, Lancaster, we're a research-led university. So we've got academics here who do world-leading research, but also world-leading teaching as well. And I think is really important when you're looking at a university, when you're looking at people to learn from, that you're choosing people who actually excel in both of those things, not just one of them. Okay. So I think with that, I'm going to thank you for listening to me, and I'll pass you over to my colleague Simon, who's going to tell you a bit more about, so he's the co-director of the master's program in artificial intelligence, and he's going to tell you more about what the module itself entails.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you for your very kind introduction. So yeah, as Brian mentioned, I just want to give you a very, very quick overview of how we've incorporated the expertise of Brian and his academic colleagues into our MSc in artificial intelligence at Lancaster. So just for a bit of context, we've been teaching a highly successful master's degree in data science for the last 10 years, but we're very excited because we're just launching the MSc in artificial intelligence this year. So within the program, we will be able to study the core elements of artificial intelligence. So we'll be teaching you how to program in Python, the key language of artificial intelligence with a view to being able to test, design, implement, test, and evaluate AI solutions. So essentially, we are looking to produce professionals by the end of this program who are able to deploy intelligent systems in a professional environment. So after the core of the course, you're able to select from a range of optional modules about the technologies and platforms which underpin artificial intelligence as it's performed in the real world these days, and also the major application areas such as natural language processing, generative AI, computer vision, and others that Brian had touched on before. Now, all of this taught material builds towards what we consider one of the key experiences of our program, which is a 3-month industry placement project wherein you're able to use the skills that you have learned during the course and demonstrate your mastery of them by implementing an AI solution to a challenge specified by an external organization that they will expect to use in their production environment ongoing. So when you come to the end of that project, you will be able to point to experience that you have acted as an AI practitioner within the real world, which, in terms of the results from our data science program, have been incredibly useful in helping our graduates stand out for their competition when launching their careers. Okay, could we move to the next slide, please, Brian? Thank you. So if you'd like to join us on our MSc in Artificial Intelligence, we would expect that you would have a 2-2 or equivalent in any subject background, though we would expect that you would have some experience of mathematics, excuse me, or computer programming. As Johnny mentioned before, there are substantial scholarships available for our international students. So next slide, please, Brian. So just for comparison, for the MSc in data science, the MSc in data science is somewhat more mathematical. So we do have an additional mathematical requirement if you'd like to join us on that course, in as much as we would accept students with a 2-1 in any background, though a 2-2 would be sufficient in a numerate subject like those that are listed on the slide there: physics, chemistry, statistics, etc. And ideally, you would have experience in a mathematical module, ideally, or a computer programming module. Yeah. And again, we have international scholarships available. Next slide, please, Brian. So if you're weighing your choices between artificial intelligence and data science, well, as Brian has illustrated, they are somewhat similar. They are closely related as disciplines, though you can think that there are somewhat different objectives of each of the applications of them, in as much as, excuse me, artificial intelligence is intended to augment, support, and enhance human intelligence and replace it in some applications, whereas data science is more about deriving insights from complex information and enabling people or companies, organizations to make better decisions. As I've mentioned, the way that we approach data science and artificial intelligence here at Lancaster, we draw more on statistical learning, statistical modeling in our data science program, though there are elements of that also in artificial intelligence, though we have perhaps a broader application of a broader coverage of the application areas in artificial intelligence. So both of our programs end with a 3-month placement to get you that real world experience. Next slide, please, Brian. Okay, the focus of our postgraduate taught programs is primarily to launch people's careers in the technology disciplines in which they're interested. Now, this has been our unrelenting focus for the last 10 years of our data science program. And in providing people with the skills and the real world experience, they have gone on to work as data scientists at some of the world's most prestigious employers. So just showing some of the organizations listed below, we have data scientists, principal data scientists, and senior data consultants in all of those and many more organizations around the world. Next slide, please, Brian. And I'd just like to wrap up my section by giving you one example of one of our previous students. This is Sarthak Jain, who joined us, I think, 4 years ago. 4 years ago, yes, for the Bachelor of Technology. Sarthak did our computing pathway on the data science program. He did his placement project with a research company called Bonamy Finch down in Surrey in the south of England. And they were sufficiently impressed with him as to offer him employment straight after his project, which is something that is happening in an increasing amount, that we look on the projects as potentially 3-month-long job interviews. So our students are often employed by their project hosts. But anyway, Sarthak worked with Bonamy Finch for a number of years and has recently moved on to a research firm in London that you may have heard of, LexisNexis, who are the legal information firm, and continues to build his career there. So that's he's been very pleased with the way that his career has progressed. So that's just an example of how the course can work for our students. So I think that's the end of my section. Brian, do you want to move on? I think I will hand over to Johnny. Thanks for listening.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Simon. And thank you for Brian for that presentation there as well. So before we get to the Q&A section next, I wanted to share with everyone today our scholarships, our postgraduate scholarships in particular for international students. And we have two main scholarships on offer for students applying to us from India. We have our Lancaster University Global Scholarship, and we also have our Faculty of Science and Technology Dean's Award, which is available for courses in the sciences, and absolutely our master's courses in artificial intelligence and in data science are included in this. So that first award that we offer, this is the Lancaster University Global Scholarship, and this is a £5,000 partial tuition fee waiver for students looking to start with us in 2025, later this year in October. For our scholarships at Lancaster, it's really worth highlighting that you are considered as part of the application process, so students are automatically considered. And for the Lancaster University Global Scholarship, we require students to achieve the equivalent of a first-class undergraduate UK degree. We also have our Science and Technology Dean's Award, which is a £5,000 partial tuition fee waiver. And this is for students who achieve the equivalent of either a first-class degree or the equivalent of a 2-1 honours degree there as well. And this is for students applying to any full-time taught masters within the Faculty of Science and Technology. And what I'd really like to highlight there is that these awards can be combined. So for students who are who receive the equivalent of a first-class award, they are eligible to receive a £10,000 scholarship tuition fee reduction. If you'd like to find more information about this, I'd really encourage you all to go to the Lancaster University homepage or the Lancaster University homepage on the SIUK website, or alternative, please book an appointment with one of SIUK's counsellors, or visit your nearest SIUK branch. I'm sure they would be more than happy to talk you through our scholarships provision at Lancaster University. Okay, next slide, Brian. Very briefly, I think it's important to provide a little bit of context around Lancaster as a campus, as an institution. You know, I have no doubt for those of you watching today, you're looking at a variety of different university settings and experiences. And actually, we'll have our student ambassadors available to answer questions very shortly. But something that's really important to understand about Lancaster is our identity as a campus-based university. I like to think of Lancaster University very much as a small student city or a community of students, and you can see a picture of our campus there with everything on site, including our accommodation, our lecture theatres, our study spaces, our academic departments. But certainly this campus environment and this community is a key element to the Lancaster University student experience. Next slide, please. We're also a collegiate-based university at Lancaster. We're one of a small number of universities in the UK to have a college system. We have a dedicated postgraduate college there as well for our masters and our PhD students. Our postgraduate community come to us from across the UK, but also from around the world. And I really do think that Lancaster is a global campus, and that's reflected in our student community, but also within our academic teaching community as well within our departments. But the college system that we have is something that really does make Lancaster stand out. It adds, another support network, another network of people that you can meet and make friends with. Next slide, please, Brian. And finally, just before we go to the Q&A, on our doorstep here in Lancaster, as I mentioned, we have the historic city of Lancaster. Lancaster has a population of roughly 140,000 people. So, in comparison to cities in India, which you might be joining us from today, we're a smaller city, but that by no means means that there is, there's nothing happening in Lancaster. Lancaster is a vibrant student city with plenty of activities, multiple festivals taking place across the year, music festivals, food festivals. There are plenty of places to go and go to coffee shops, bars, restaurants, and some excellent places to go and get food with your friends. And as I mentioned, if you want to travel further afield around the UK, then it's very easy to do this from Lancaster. We have a direct train connection to Manchester Airport, for example, and we are well connected to other parts of the United Kingdom. Okay, next slide. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. We're now going to the Q&A. And just before we go straight for those first questions, I'd like to bring Achintia and Joe onto the call now to introduce themselves. So I've got my first question for Achintia and Joe. The first question is, tell us about yourself, introduce yourself, your name, your course, and maybe tell us, why did you come to Lancaster? What was your main reason for coming to study your Masters in Data Science? I've given a little bit of away there, haven't I? Achintia, over to you first.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Achintia from India. I'm from Lucknow, to be very precise. So my decision-making factor for coming to Lancaster was that, when I applied, I got the 5,000 pound scholarship firstly, and I saw the I'm here studying masters in data science, so I saw the data science ranking on the website and the QS ranking and all of those things, and it's one of the best in the globe. So yeah, that was the two main reasons I came for the Lancaster. And the Lancaster as a city also, when I came here, I saw that city is quite small, but it's very fun. You have everything over here, you can get anything you want. And the Lancaster as a city, it's pretty in the center of the UK, like the connectivity from Lancaster to all the cities of nearby are very easy. You can get train, buses to Manchester, Liverpool, Blackpool, London, everything. It's very easy to connect with all of the cities in the UK. So yeah.
Excellent, thank you, Achintia. Thank you, Joe. Over to you.
Hello, everybody. I'm hoping you're all well. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I look all right because before I was sat in the darkness for some reason. I was trying to give off the illusion that it's a really nice day in Lancaster, and it is. But apparently, so that kind of played in my not in my favor. But as I said, I'm Joe. I'm studying data science, and I originally come from the other end of the UK. So I come from a little town called Torquay. Even though it says on the slide that I come from Exeter, that's the closest place that it would find. And why did I choose Lancaster? I chose it because it was very, very highly ranked. I did my undergraduate here as well as my postgraduate degree, and it's highly ranked for both. So I just essentially stayed when I transitioned across, essentially.
That's great. Thank you, Joe. You did exactly what I did. You've stayed and you're still here at Lancaster. Fantastic. Thank you both. Okay, Rahul, we're going to go to questions now and take questions from the audience. So yeah, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the insightful presentation and your time for onto this. So I'll read out the questions from the YouTube chat box now that we received from the students. Okay, so the first question is, how do you see AI evolving over the next decade, and what industries will be most impacted?
Okay, excellent first question. Brian or Simon, I'm going to hand that question over to you. Who wants to go for that first?
Brian, do you want to talk about the impact on the discipline, and maybe I'll chip in with my thoughts about industry afterwards?
Sure. There's yeah. I mean, in terms of industry itself, it'd actually be difficult to pinpoint. I think an industry that's not going to be impacted by AI. I think that would be the big challenge.
Yeah.
In terms of AI as a research area, it's something that we always see evolving. Every single year, if you go to a major conference like CDPR or ECCV or something like this, there's a new topic or a new group of topics every single year. So what's popular at the moment is things like vision language models. What's been popular for quite some time is explainable AI. And that's one of the things that I don't see dying down, that I think is going to continue to be popular, because frankly, there's no good approach to explainable AI. I'm sure many people would contradict me there, but there's no good approach to explainable AI at the moment. So it's these kind of challenging areas that are very important for actual practical implementation that aren't studied, that don't exist at the moment. So those are the areas to watch, I think, at the moment, are explainable AI and vision language. And acoustics also, I think, is going to be very important.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Yeah, from my perspective, I can see AI taking away a great many of the kind of commodity repetitive jobs, as have been eroded by previous industrial revolutions. But we're seeing the march of AI in towards information processing, and also kind of the efficiency of gathering, weighing, and synthesizing information and applying that knowledge in an effective way. I think that we're going to see AI make an impact in many industries for that reason, because people, for instance, researchers or academics, have realized that it can be very efficient just to kind of mark out a potential research area with AI's assistance in terms of, tell me what's the latest themes which are emerging in this area, bring me a synthesis of this, and then that will inform my research. That's the sort of thing which is perhaps going to support blue sky thinking in a broad range of disciplines. And knowing how to interact with AI effectively and augment your own capabilities is probably what's going to provide people with a competitive edge in professional and industrial settings ongoing.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you, Simon. Yeah, Rahul, over to you for any more questions.
So the other question we get, what makes Lancaster University a great choice for studying AI and data science compared to other institutions?
Excellent
Shall
question,
I?
Simon.
Oh, well, thank you. Naturally, we're going to be biased, but I would say that we are an excellent choice for both of those disciplines, as demonstrated through the expertise that Brian has shown today. And Brian is one of our many academic experts across all aspects of data science and AI. But one of the key things that I would emphasize is the fact that we developed our master's programs in data science and AI with the specific purpose of equipping our students with the skills which will allow them to launch and shape their careers, mainly in industry, because that's where the majority of our students want to go, but also they're equipped to launch research careers in their disciplines if that's what they want. Now, the fact that we have a network of literally hundreds of external organizations who are interested in giving projects to our students, giving placements, and also employing our students is a massive advantage for students who are coming to study data science and AI and looking to move on to careers. And I would say that the fact that we have launched so many successful careers across the disciplines bears testimony to the advantages of our programs.
Just to add to that, Simon, and actually Achintia, I might ask you to come in on this as well. So, Simon, I know at the moment you're going through a process of working with current students on the course like Achintia and building connections with industry, interviewing students for these placement experiences. You know, I think one of the great strengths about our data science course and, you know, our AI course when it starts in October will be the that dedicated careers provision that they get from yourself, Simon, you know, but also that kind of real world perspective and, you know, that preparation for roles after their studies. So, like, Simon, could you tell us more about how you work with students to prepare them for placements or provide those opportunities? And then Achintia, maybe you can share that from the student experience.
Well, certainly, because from day one, and Chintia can bear testimony to this, from day one, I ensure that the students hold at the forefront of their minds the fact that artificial intelligence and data science, as performed within professional environments, are done for a purpose. There is a reason that companies and organizations are interested in those disciplines, because data science, for instance, is done for the specific purpose of allowing organizations to make better decisions. So I encourage students from day one to think about what is data science for, yeah, in the wider world. That's the same approach that we'll be taking with artificial intelligence. So throughout that, the students are welcome to meet with me on a weekly basis. I have a drop-in session whereby they can explain to me where they want to take their careers, and then I can help work with them in terms of helping them present themselves to employers in the most advantageous light, but also working with them to go out and find suitable placement hosts, suitable potential employers, suitable external partners who can bring them on in terms of careers. Yeah. So in addition to that, both myself and the Central Careers Service hold workshops, which again stand the students in good stead in terms of preparing for interviews, which they can gain experience within a supportive environment for something that is going to be critical for launching their careers in the real world. So, modesty forbids me from saying any more about my role, Johnny, but you're very gracious for bringing that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Achintia, from a student perspective, then, you know, could you tell us a little bit about the support that you've received, how this has helped you with preparation for placements? Yeah, if you could tell us a bit more about that, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. So as a student point of view, I would say that Simon is doing a great job. First of all, like, we can book any time with a call or a offline meeting in person with Simon if you have any doubts in your application form or all of those things. And till now, I would say we have received around 65 placement projects, and they are still coming in. So I don't know what that number goes up, but yeah, we all are very amazed with the number of placement projects we are receiving from with the help of Simon. Basically, he acts as a bridge between us and the industry out there. So any questions we have, we go through Simon, and then Simon conveys to them. And regarding the interviews, if we like, if you apply for a placement project and like if you receive an interview, then you can always ask for help with Simon or the career service you have in the on the Lancaster University. They are also doing a very great job. So So that so for the interview process, you can go towards them and ask them like what should it be like, and how you can answer the questions, and how you can behave, or how you can improve your soft skills and the communications with them. So yeah, from the student point of view, it's going great, and I'm also a student rep, so I can vouch for the whole cohort from my data science that all the cohorts are very impressed and very amazed by the number of projects and then the help we received from Simon. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Chintia. Thank you, Simon.
That's incredibly kind of you to say so, Chintia. The one thing that I would share, and forgive me, but the fact that Brian, myself, and everybody around our programs cares about our programs very much indeed. And we see the key measure of our success in launching our students' careers. So that's where we place a great deal of emphasis throughout what we do. Sorry, Johnny. Back to you.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Simon. Rahul, are there any more questions for our panel of experts today?
Yeah, there's one more. I mean, what kind of practical projects or research opportunities can students expect in Lancaster University's AI courses?
Shall I take that one?
Yeah, sure. Go for it, Simon.
Okay. So we have already received AI-themed projects from at the boundary between AI and data science, which are currently being offered to and undertaken by our data science students. So we will be expanding this in future years. So for instance, we have had insurance companies looking at the development of AI systems to weigh claims against insurance policies in a more efficient manner. So I'd describe that as at the boundary between AI and data science, because it still refers back to the making of decisions, but it's looking to replace or at least augment the human insurance assessor with an intelligent system. So there are machine learning elements within that project, but it's also kind of something which we expect the insurance company will be expanding further. So in addition to that, there's a project this year, which again, it could be undertaken by either a data science or an AI student, which is looking at the secure use of natural language systems within corporate environments. So Brian can perhaps tell you a little bit more about this, but one of the vulnerabilities of a public-facing, excuse me, natural language system is that in a corporate context, it can tell you things that the company don't want it to tell you with prompt insertion, I believe. So that's something which is going to be a growth area for projects in the coming years. Incredibly exciting opportunities.
That's great. Thank you, Simon. I'm aware that we're coming towards the end of the session, but Brian, please can you move the slide along, and that will show our contact details so people can get in touch. What I would say is that if anyone has any questions after the session today, you are welcome to reach out to Brian, Simon, and myself if you want to know more about our master's courses in artificial intelligence and in data science. You can also chat to Achintia and chat to Joe. Sorry, Joe, we've not had much time to actually speak to you today. But actually, Joe, just very, very quickly, your subject background coming into data science, I'm right in thinking you actually came from a non-computing background. Is that right?
Yeah, so I came from linguistics and I made the kind of sideways jump into computing.
Perfect. So I would really encourage anyone watching today, if you're coming from a non-computing discipline or you're coming from outside this kind of area, have a chat with Joe. I might have just made Joe really busy right now, but if you would like to speak to Joe, Achintia, or current students at Lancaster, you can do so by going to the Chat to Our Students function on the Lancaster University website, and they'll be there to share their insights about studying and living in Lancaster. Okay. I think it's time to wrap up, very, very sadly. I'd like to say thank you to Brian, to Simon, to Achintia and Joe for sharing their insights today. It's been really interesting to listen to you all. And for those of you listening today, if you would like to know more about Lancaster, please come and speak with SI UK, book an appointment with one of their counsellors, and find out more through the SI UK University website. They would love to support you there. Rahul, okay, that's it from me. I'll hand over to you to close the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the valuable time. All the audience, if you have any further questions, please feel free to contact SI UK India office. For more updates, do follow us on our social media handles. Bye-bye. Take care.